Hi YouTube. There's a reason why reasonable people tend to shy away from or reject extremist ideologies or extremist positions within ideologies, and that's generally speaking because those positions aren't all that reasonable. A person who's very close to me was relaying her experience with regards to the women's rights movement in the 60s and 70s and how she chose to sort of separate from the pack, so to speak, in that regard. Mostly because of a lot of the disparaging remarks, automatic sort of disparaging remarks against men, or the promotion of divorce for its own sake, and the idea that sort of all PIV sex is some sort of an assault, that penetration is an assault or an affront by the man against the woman, and there's no such thing as lovemaking, and these kind of things, and other reasons, of course. And that got me thinking about the current state of feminism, the feminist ideology, the third wave feminism, if you will. And I don't think any reasonable person is against equality. I think you'll find most reasonable people everywhere will generally adopt the term egalitarian, perhaps. But there are many aspects of current feminist ideology that I find very unreasonable. And one such example of that is the whole notion of victim blaming. Now, before I get into that, I do want to say that there is such a thing as victim blaming. Generally, we're speaking about rape perpetrated against a woman here. And in fact, it was one such example of victim blaming, that prompted me to make this video. So I'm not saying there's no such thing. The video, I'll link it below, was a young Christian man who had decided to go to a slut walk with a bullhorn and a sign. The t-shirt that he was wearing had a big finger pointing, and it said, I think it said, "You whore." And the sign that he had was stating, it had two sides to it, but the one side that I remember said that "you provoke rape." And he was referring to, of course, the dress, the mannerisms, perhaps, and the places that women might go, which may end up resulting in a rape. And I don't know what he was saying on the bullhorn, but there was a young woman there who apparently had been raped, who was very upset. She was crying, begging him to leave, saying that he was being hurtful. And he softened in his extremist position a little bit while he was being confronted, but of course his sign still said "You provoke rape," and his t-shirt still said "You whore." And this is clearly victim blaming. "You provoke rape" is clearly victim blaming, and I don't think reasonable people accept that message. But what ends up happening, where the unreasonableness comes in on the feminist camp, is that they suggest that anyone who might give some recommendations as to how women can better protect themselves and to monitor their own security, and who would assert that your own personal security is actually your responsibility, that is victim blaming, that is blaming the woman for the rape. And I would say that it's a mistake, but it's actually disingenuous in the way that some of the more radical feminists push that agenda. They make the case that you are victim blaming, and that maybe even you are some sort of a rape apologist, as they would say. And I kind of think they know better. Some of the everyday average girls who are participating in the "I need feminism because" type video campaigns and things like that, they may not have thought the rationale through quite as well as some of the upper echelon feminists, but I'm pretty sure those people know a little bit better. So much in the same way that I can get a reduction in premiums from my insurance company if I put some sort of a anti-vehicle theft alarm or an immobilizer on the vehicle, especially if I live in an area where vehicle crime rates are high. It would be recommended, or at least there are recommendations that could be made for a woman in order to protect herself from high-risk activities. That's not to say in any way, shape, or form, and no reasonable person would make this case, that the rape is somehow her fault, or that she deserved it if she doesn't take those precautions and gets raped. The rape is always 100% the responsibility, the fault of the person committing the crime. This is a crime in all cases, and there's no way that a person who has this perpetrated against them is responsible for it. But what we are all responsible for is our own safety and security, knowing the environment that we're in. And if there are perpetrators of crime in the area that we are in, then we need to protect ourselves accordingly. There's a reason why I lock the doors of my house when I leave. There's a reason I don't leave the keys in my car when I park at the shopping mall. There's a reason that people buy clubs for their car steering wheels. There's a reason that I don't have my PIN number for my bank account and my credit cards written on a scrap of paper in my wallet. Those are all personal responsibility taken for your own security. If the crime is still perpetrated against you, regardless of whether you took those precautions or not, the crime is not your fault. You didn't deserve the crime. But you can take steps to prevent that crime, to help prevent that crime, if you follow these certain guidelines. And these are the only recommendations that are being made by reasonable people to women to help avoid any kind of an assault. And it might, there are precautions you can take beyond rape, of course, whether you're man or woman. And no one would suggest that suggesting these precautions are somehow blaming victims. And I think this is an argument that needs to die in a fire. You know what? There is victim blaming out there. But victim blaming, when it happens, is actually very clear, and it's abhorrent. It's terrible behavior to tell people that they provoked their own rape. It's awful. This is, and it's certainly not very sensitive. It's not very compassionate way to approach someone who's had such a vile and abusive attack perpetrated against them. But it's obvious when it happens. And I think equally obvious is the unreasonable position that some extremist feminists take in calling all suggestions that your personal responsibility or personal security is your own responsibility and that there are precautions you can take constitutes victim blaming. Shameful behavior. Thanks for watching.